It began one night when a woman claimed to have smelled roses in her bedroom, even though no flowers were nearby. A week later, it was incense. Then metallic notes appeared out of nowhere. No one else noticed them, and she thought she was losing her mind. You're not alone if something like this has ever happened to you. Many people report phantom scents during profound shifts. Some traditions see them as signs of awakening, while science recognizes them as a known but usually harmless phenomenon. Later in this video, I'll explain what these smells can mean and when they actually deserve a closer look. These strange, unexplainable experiences raise bigger questions. Are your senses breaking down, or are they stretching beyond what you've been used to? As you'll see, awakening can stir up not only unusual perceptions, but also physical sensations that make your whole body feel like it's running on a different current. Have you ever had the strange feeling that your body was humming from the inside out, like a current had been switched on? It might happen while you're resting, sitting quietly in meditation, or just as you're drifting off to sleep. There's no phone buzzing beside you, no truck outside rattling the windows, yet your body ripples with a low vibration. For many, the first reaction is worry, because when something mysterious stirs in the body, the mind instantly tries to label it as a problem. Imagine lying still at night, the room calm, when a wave of buzzing rolls through your legs or arms. It's not painful, more like a persistent shimmer under the skin. You shift position, maybe change sides, but the hum lingers until it decides to fade on its own. That moment of not knowing what's happening can feel unnerving, as if your system is firing off glitches you can't control. Here's the reassuring part. Many doctors describe sensations like these as benign fasciculations or hypnagogic jerks, simple twitches or micro-vibrations that are often harmless. They tend to appear when the nervous system is adjusting, especially close to sleep or in relaxed states. Still, there's an important caveat. If the sensations become severe, spread extensively, or persist, it's always wise to seek medical evaluation. Framing it this way removes some of the fear, giving both scientific grounding and practical safety. Beyond medicine, many people who undergo changes in consciousness interpret these vibrations very differently. They describe them as signs of energy stirring, the nervous system syncing with something new. Picture it like an inner Wi-Fi upgrade. For years your system has run steadily, but now it's rebooting with a better frequency. Those odd internal ripples are simply the signals blinking while the connection stabilizes. If you've ever felt this exact buzz, especially near bedtime, drop a one-line comment below that says, "I felt buzzing." Your response can help others realize how common this actually is and that they aren't alone in it. Research into meditation supports this perspective. Studies and first-hand accounts describe subtle internal tremors or vibrations during deep practice. Reports from people hovering between waking and sleeping, the hypnagogic state, mention sudden surges of energy or body-wide ripples that match what awakening stories describe. In both traditions and labs, the nervous system shows that it can express unusual patterns when awareness shifts gears. What makes this more approachable is noticing how many people experience almost identical sensations. Someone sitting quietly at a retreat suddenly feels their spine ripple with energy. Another person wakes up with their body humming like a faint electric wire. Some describe it as lying on a track while a train rumbles far away. No sound, just vibration. When accounts repeat across thousands of people, across places and contexts, it points to something consistent rather than random malfunction. Instead of treating these vibrations as red flags, you can regard them as tuning signals, like a body humming itself into alignment with a new rhythm. The panic response, tight muscles, shallow breath only, magnifies the intensity, while a calmer response allows the hum to flow cleanly. If it happens, one simple action makes a difference. Pause and breathe slowly for a full minute, observing instead of resisting. If it passes, you've allowed your body to complete its reset. If it doesn't or begins worsening, that's your cue to get checked with a professional. These mysterious bodily currents are part of how inner awareness quietly reshapes ordinary perception. And when your body can hum with a charge you didn't ask for, it invites another question. What happens when your senses themselves start to detect things that shouldn't be there at all? Have you ever been in an empty room and suddenly caught the scent of roses, incense, or even smoke, even though nothing around you could explain it? These moments can come out of nowhere. 1 second everything is still. The next a fragrance sweeps through a sieve carried by invisible hands. For some it's flowers. For others it's herbs, spices, or even metallic notes sharp enough to make them pause. At first it might feel gentle or intriguing. But when the source refuses to appear, the experience becomes unsettling. It's natural in these moments for the mind to go into overdrive. You wonder if your senses are failing, if you're losing touch with reality, or if illness might be creeping in. Because our senses anchor us to the external world, any break in that pattern sparks concern. Smelling something that's not there can feel more threatening than it sounds, precisely because it challenges trust in perception itself. Here's where a little clarity can help. Medically, these unexplained smells are called phantosmia. Doctors recognize them as olfactory hallucinations, scents without an external trigger. In many cases, they occur briefly in otherwise healthy people, often during transitions in the nervous system or changes in emotional state. Clinicians look more deeply only if the scents become severe, frequent, or disruptive to daily life. Understanding that science acknowledges this phenomenon and that it's not automatically a signal of disease can remove some of the fear. From another perspective, many spiritual traditions interpret these same events in very different ways. Instead of seeing them as mistakes in the senses, they're framed as signs that perception is expanding. A sudden fragrance in an empty room is viewed as the inner senses widening past their usual borders, like a radio temporarily catching a nearby hidden station. From this perspective, what initially feels like an error is recast as proof that your awareness is shifting towards subtler layers of experience. Take the story of a meditator who began smelling incense during her practice, despite never lighting any. At first, she resisted the thought, assuming it was a trick of memory. But as it repeated, always during deeper states of focus, the scent became a kind of confirmation for her, evidence that her inner state was changing in ways she could feel but not yet explain. Years later, she remembered those phantom scents as milestones, not mistakes. If this happens to you, one practical step is to journal your experiences. Write down when the scent appeared, how long it lasted, what it smelled like, what emotions were present, and whether anyone else noticed. Over time, the log can reveal patterns, whether it occurs during relaxation, at stressful moments, or during inner states like meditation. Instead of leaving the event as an isolated puzzle, journaling empowers you to track your own experience, which can make it less frightening and more meaningful. Communities of people exploring awakening often report these same scents. Online and in person, you'll find stories of roses blooming out of the air, incense appearing in silent meditation halls, or even metallic traces showing up during emotional breakthroughs. The repetition across individuals points to a shared pattern rather than isolated accidents. When dozens describe the same thing happening in similar contexts, the weight of coincidence feels less convincing. Of course, it's still wise to keep a balance. If scent episodes are brand new to you, become intense. Or remain persistently distressing, consult a medical professional to rule out other causes. This doesn't eliminate the possibility of deeper meaning. It simply ensures safety while leaving room to reflect on the broader significance. So instead of assuming these fragrances prove something is broken, you might see them as early signals of change, evidence that your perceptual system is tuning beyond its familiar settings. A nose tuned wider may catch a pulse that most people walk past. And when perception stretches in ways you can't explain, don't be surprised if the environment itself sometimes reacts in unusual ways too. Has your phone ever frozen during an intense emotional moment, or maybe the lights flickered right as your feelings spiked? Many people going through awakening describe these kinds of disruptions. Technology isn't supposed to respond to mood swings, but when enough stories line up, what feels random starts to look like a repeating pattern. One-off glitches are normal. A bulb can burn out, a battery can drain, and apps crash without warning. But people often report something different. Electronics behaving unpredictably only during personal breakthroughs, meditation, or emotional surges. In awakening communities, repeating patterns centered around one person become noteworthy, and they're shared enough that you find the same themes echoed across groups worldwide. For example, one person described how meditation brought strange consistency to their laptop crashes. After each deep session, their computer would freeze within minutes. At first, they assumed it was an outdated device, but when the same issue occurred on a new machine, the cycle seemed harder to dismiss. Each crash seemed to match their own state, as if the energy release had made the system unstable until it leveled out again. Stories like this don't prove causation, but they add to the chorus of personal accounts linking inner states with outer glitches. One way these experiences get described is through the metaphor of personal energy fields spilling into the environment. People sometimes joke that the surge feels strong enough to short out the matrix. It's an edgy phrase that captures how overwhelming these states can feel, but it's important to add context. Science recognizes that the body naturally produces electric and magnetic fields. Your heartbeat and brainwaves literally generate tiny electromagnetic signals. Some studies have investigated these biofields, but there's no definitive laboratory evidence showing that they can directly interfere with household electronics. That means the link remains anecdotal rather than proven, though the lived experiences themselves continue to be shared widely. Framing it this way helps keep the balance. On one hand, countless individuals notice their devices acting strangely under emotional or meditative intensity. On the other hand, you can also explain each case by pointing to technical causes. What makes this particular phenomenon meaningful is how those glitches seem to cluster around personal spikes in energy rather than at random. If you've ever noticed your phone freeze right when you're anxious or your favorite playlists skip while you're overwhelmed, you're not imagining that many others report the same. These experiences raise as many questions as they answer, but they don't mean you're destined to destroy electronics. A practical reminder here, it's always worth trying standard fixes, such as restarting your phone, refreshing your apps, and checking for software updates. If the problem continues, look for technical issues. That way you're covered from both perspectives. Seen through the lens of awakening, technological disruptions can act like mirrors. They appear when the system inside you is radiating more strongly than usual, as if part of your recalibration spills into your environment. Every frozen screen or flickering light becomes less like an omen and more like a reflection of your own energy adjusting. Rather than proving something is wrong with you, These brief tech malfunctions can symbolically highlight growth moments when your inner state is running at a higher output than your usual baseline. Reassurance is important too. You aren't cursed, and you're not permanently damaging the devices around you. What's most common is a temporary mismatch where your heightened state feels out of step with machines designed for neutral stability. Once your emotions and energy balance again, that strange sensitivity typically resolves on its own. Glitches in electronics can be unsettling because we expect them to work consistently, unaffected by our mood or level of awareness. But as odd as those flickers and crashes are, they hint at something larger, your experience of reality itself becoming less rigid. And when technology, built for reliability, starts bending at the edges, it raises a deeper question about what happens when the very framework we rely on for structure no longer holds steady. Have you ever looked at the clock and realized that what felt like 15 minutes had actually been 3 hours? Or noticed the opposite, where a few seconds dragged on as if time itself had stalled? These distortions often catch people off guard. They seem like harmless quirks at first, but when they happen repeatedly, they start to raise questions about how steady reality really is. Two of the most common forms of this are déjà vu and vanishing hours. With déjà vu, you walk into a room, see the light fall across a table, and a wave of familiarity presses down. It feels eerily specific, like you've stood in this exact moment before. On the other hand, people also describe sitting down to read, for a few minutes only to look up and realize hours have disappeared, with no memory of what filled the gap. Both experiences challenge the sense that time runs in one smooth, linear flow. Other examples show the same pattern. Someone in a checkout line feels that 5 short minutes have stretched into what feels like half an hour. Others report rare, disorienting episodes of complete stillness, where everything pauses for just a breath before life snaps back into motion. Experiences like these can be unsettling because we tend to rely on time as the most solid, predictable framework we have. When that structure bends even slightly, it makes reality itself feel unstable. Naturally, the first thought in these moments is fear. You may wonder if something is wrong with your brain or memory. But distortions like these are not unusual. Psychologists have long observed how focus, trauma, and altered states like meditation can shift time perception. Flow states can make hours pass unnoticed, while boredom or stress can cause seconds to drag on. From another angle, people in awakening communities interpret these same events not as breakdowns but as shifts in perception. Here's where the perspectives divide but also complement one another. Some people see time distortions as awareness brushing against multiple timelines or layers of reality, moments where consciousness expands past the usual track. Neuroscientists, however, describe déjà vu as a memory misfire and time gaps as lapses of attention. Both explanations point to the same core truth. Your perception of time is far more flexible than you might assume. Holding both views together allows the experience to feel less frightening and more like a natural part of human awareness. Think of it like a movie that skips a few frames. The story continues, but you notice the jump because it breaks the flow. That's close to how these glitches in time feel when they happen. You sense the skip directly, even though events keep moving forward. It doesn't mean everything is collapsing. It means you've become briefly aware of the mechanics behind the flow. What makes these moments valuable is how they can shift from disorienting to meaningful with practice. Journaling these distortions, the length they seem to last, what you were doing when they happened, and how you felt, can reveal patterns across weeks or months. As you compare entries, You may see them aligning with periods of personal change or intense inner focus. This simple practice transforms seemingly random lapses into signs of progress, reminding you that your awareness is in motion. Stories in forums and groups show just how common this is. People everywhere describe moments when time seems to stand still, repeat itself, drag on, or slip entirely away. Reading those shared accounts adds perspective. You're not alone, and these experiences are not signs of collapse. In fact, for many they become one of the clearest signals that their inner system is stretching beyond familiar limits. If this has happened to you, whether déjà vu or those moments where hours disappear, share it in the comments and include the time of day it occurred. Your story may help someone else feel less unsettled about their own slip in time. When time itself bends this way, the feeling can be disorienting, but it doesn't have to be frightening. In fact, what feels most abnormal in the moment often becomes evidence later that you're adapting to a broader sense of reality. And that shift prepares you to see even the strangest symptoms of awakening in a very different light. What seems unsettling in the middle of an awakening often becomes proof of growth, not collapse. Vibrations, scents, glitches, and shifts are signals that your system is recalibrating, not breaking down. Instead of resisting them, you can view these moments as natural markers of awareness expanding in ways the mind may not fully explain. That said, if any symptom is sudden, severe, worsening, or causes serious distress, seek medical care. Many of these phenomena are harmless, but physicians do investigate persistent cases for safety. Comment your strangest symptom and how it made you feel, one sentence only. These shifts are awkward, but they usually mean you're recalibrating on your own timeline.